Every generation of enthusiasts remembers the first time they encountered a machine that seemed to bend the rules of what was possible on four wheels. Sleek lines carving through the air, an engine note that stirred something primal, and a cabin that whispered both luxury and focus. Some cars arrive quietly and fade away just as silently. Others ignite a movement, leaving ripples across decades of design, culture, and performance. The fascination comes not just from speed or beauty, but from the question of why this particular creation mattered, why it stood tall when others disappeared. To understand that, we need to rewind, to study the context in which it was born, the ambitions behind its shape, and the way it won or lost hearts on the road and in the marketplace. This is more than a profile of a vehicle. It's an excavation of intent, a story of evolution, and a look at the legacy still unfolding today. And if you've ever wondered how one series could define an entire philosophy of driving, you're in the right place. Like and subscribe, and drop a comment with which model or year you want covered next. The Porsche 356, introduced in the late 1940s, marked the beginning of a lineage that would ultimately redefine the sports car. To understand the Porsche 356, we need to go back to its origins in a Europe still recovering from the devastation of World War II. Against that backdrop, the car was more than just a new product. It was a bold declaration that engineering, ambition, and sheer determination could create beauty and speed when resources were scarce. Designed by Ferdinand Porsche's son, Ferry, the 356 was crafted with a lightweight body, a compact rear-mounted engine, and a philosophy that emphasized efficiency over brute force. In plain terms, it wasn't about building the biggest or most powerful car. It was about making every pound and every horsepower count. Owners quickly discovered that the Porsche 356 delivered agility and an unmatched sense of connection between driver and machine, a balance that would later become the foundation of the brand's DNA. Yet the car wasn't born into an easy market. At the time, many buyers sought practical transportation, not sports cars. That tension between practicality and aspiration would shape the way the 356 evolved. The decision to focus on a rear-engine layout was unusual, even controversial. Most manufacturers favored front-engine designs, where handling was easier to tame and weight distribution more forgiving. But Ferry Porsche leaned into the challenge, believing that with the right balance, the rear-mounted engine could provide superior traction and an engaging driving experience. The result was a car that felt different from anything else on the road. Early buyers found themselves adjusting to its quirks: snap oversteer, light steering, and a need for precision. But once mastered, the Porsche 356 rewarded them with agility on winding roads and confidence on slick surfaces. This learning curve became part of the car's charm, creating a bond between driver and machine that enthusiasts still recall today. Production began modestly, with hand-built bodies assembled in small workshops. Each Porsche 356 carried with it the marks of craftsmanship rather than mass production. Buyers who took delivery weren't just purchasing transportation. They were joining a small, almost clandestine community of people who believed in a different kind of driving pleasure. In an era dominated by boxy sedans and utilitarian vehicles, the 356 looked like an object from the future, sleek, aerodynamic, and quietly rebellious. Its shape wasn't just about aesthetics. Ferry Porsche and his team knew that a teardrop-like body would reduce drag and improve performance, even with the relatively modest power available from its air-cooled four-cylinder engine. Over time, the Porsche 356 evolved through multiple iterations. The 356A, 356B, and 356C, each refining the formula with small but significant improvements. Power output increased gradually, reliability improved, and comforts were added for buyers who wanted a balance of excitement and day-to-day usability. Owners appreciated that they could drive the car to the office during the week, then take it to a rally or a winding mountain road on the weekend without missing a beat. This duality, practical enough to use daily, yet thrilling enough to feel special, was rare in the 1950s and 60s automotive world. It set the Porsche 356 apart and laid the groundwork for what would eventually become the brand's defining principle: building cars that could live in both worlds, ordinary and extraordinary. The Porsche 356 also marked the brand's entry into motorsport, a move that was both risky and essential. Entering endurance races and hill climbs, the small, relatively low-powered sports car surprised rivals with its ability to finish races reliably, often outperforming cars with larger engines. Winning on the track gave the 356 credibility, and credibility translated into sales. Buyers began to view it not just as a stylish oddity, but as a legitimate performance machine. Motorsport success reinforced the idea that Porsche's design decisions, lightweight bodies, rear-engine traction, aerodynamic efficiency, were not just quirks, but competitive advantages. Ownership of the Porsche 356 was never about convenience. It was about belonging to a different philosophy of driving. The cars were relatively expensive for their size and performance figures, meaning buyers had to believe in the vision, not just the numbers. Yet once behind the wheel, those buyers became evangelists, spreading the word about how unique the car felt. In an era when American manufacturers were building larger and larger vehicles, the 356 stood as a counterpoint, proof that smaller, lighter, and more deliberate engineering could deliver an experience just as powerful, if not more so. What made the Porsche 356 truly special wasn't just the technical details, it was the culture it created. Car clubs began to form around the model, creating a sense of camaraderie among owners. Drivers gathered not only to compare notes on performance, but to share a philosophy of driving joyfully and purposefully. This community aspect amplified the car's impact, making it more than just an object of metal and rubber. It became a shared identity. The fact that so many 356s remain cherished today, meticulously maintained by collectors, speaks to the way it captured hearts beyond the numbers. The story of the Porsche 356 is, in many ways, a story of how vision can triumph over circumstance. Built in a time of scarcity, it proved that resourcefulness and a clear design philosophy could produce something enduring. It answered a fundamental question. Could a small company operating outside the mainstream create a car that mattered on the global stage? The Porsche 356's success answered with a resounding yes. But with success came pressure. As the 1960s approached, markets shifted, competitors evolved, and expectations rose. The question became whether this foundation could support something greater, whether Porsche could take the spirit of the 356 and scale it into a new legend. That challenge would lead directly to the birth of the 911. The Porsche 911, launched in 1964, was more than just the successor to the 356. It was the reinvention of everything that car had stood for, now amplified for a new era. The Porsche 911 immediately distinguished itself with its larger body, more powerful flat-six engine, and a silhouette that would become one of the most recognizable in automotive history. Yet in its early days, the car sparked controversy. The rear-engine layout, carried over from the 356, was criticized as unstable and unforgiving. Some wondered if Porsche had taken too great a risk in staying committed to such an unconventional design. What followed was a period of evolution and proof, as the 911 became a canvas for relentless refinement. The Porsche 911 was not just about raw numbers, it was about an attitude toward engineering. While rivals chased larger displacements or brute horsepower, Porsche engineers focused on balance, incremental gains, and durability. The result was a car that could do double duty, civil enough for a daily commute, yet formidable on racetracks around the world. Early models established this formula, but it was the racing success of the 911 that solidified its reputation. From rallies in Monte Carlo to endurance contests at Daytona, the car proved that its quirks were, in fact, strengths when wielded by skilled drivers. This performance credibility didn't just sell cars. It built an aura around the 911 that no advertising campaign could have manufactured. Reception in the United States was pivotal. American buyers represented a lucrative market, and for them, the Porsche 911 carried both exotic appeal and practicality. It wasn't ostentatious in the way some Italian sports cars were. Instead, it projected a quiet confidence. Buyers found themselves drawn to the idea of owning a machine that could handle school runs during the week and autocross events on weekends. Car magazines of the era took notice, publishing stories that marveled at the way the Porsche 911 carved corners, the way its steering communicated, and the way its engine sang as it climbed through the revs. These impressions resonated deeply with an American audience looking for something that combined European sophistication with real usability. Still, the Porsche 911's path was not free of obstacles. Regulators introduced stricter safety and emissions standards through the 1970s, forcing Porsche to adapt quickly. Each update became a test. How could the company preserve the core character of the car while meeting increasingly complex rules? Instead of compromising the 911 into mediocrity, Porsche innovated. engineers introduced fuel injection, impact bumpers, and revised suspension systems, all while keeping the car's DNA intact. These adaptations gave the 911 a sense of resilience, proving it could evolve without losing its essence. The aftermarket world also began to orbit around the Porsche 911. Tuners, customizers, and private racing teams recognized that its basic structure was a platform waiting to be explored. Modified versions appeared across racing circuits, hot-rodded 911s competed in hill climbs, and specialist firms emerged to tweak every aspect of the car, from exhausts to suspension geometry. This culture of personalization reinforced the 911's mythos. No two cars needed to be identical, yet all shared the same unmistakable foundation. Enthusiasts discovered that the Porsche 911 was not just a product, it was a toolkit for expression. Competition sharpened the stakes. Other manufacturers introduced their own sports cars, aiming to capture some of the market Porsche had cultivated. But where rivals cycled through different models and identities, the Porsche 911 stayed consistent in its purpose. That consistency became its advantage. Buyers trusted that investing in a 911 meant buying into a lineage, not a passing experiment. It created a feedback loop. Success bred loyalty, loyalty sustained sales, and sales fueled further refinements. By the late 1970s and 1980s, the 911 was no longer just a successful sports car. It was an institution. Motorsport achievements elevated that status further. Variants like the Carrera RS and turbocharged 911s became legends, each pushing boundaries of speed and handling. Racing teams embraced the car's endurance, with 911s racking up victories in brutal long-distance competitions. These wins mattered because they proved, time and again, that the design principles Porsche had defended were not compromises, but triumphs of ingenuity. For enthusiasts, seeing the same basic car conquer racetracks and then drive home on public roads reinforced the magic of owning one. By the close of the 20th century, the Porsche 911 had become both an object of aspiration and a benchmark. Rival sports cars were often measured against it, whether they admitted it or not. The model's longevity created a unique dynamic. Each new version wasn't just competing against rivals, it was competing against its own past. Porsche knew this, and with every generation, engineers carefully balanced innovation with heritage. That balancing act gave the 911 an unusual continuity, a through line that connected a late 1960s model with one from the 1990s or even today. The story of the Porsche 911 in its formative decades is one of persistence. It took an idea born in the 356 and elevated it into a global symbol, facing down critics, regulations, and competition along the way. But what makes this story compelling is not just survival, it's the way the car transcended its role as a product and became a cultural marker. And as the 911 solidified its reputation through the late 20th century, it raised a larger question. How does a machine designed for speed and precision manage to endure across generations without losing its soul? That question leads us into the legacy the car has built, a legacy that continues to shape not just Porsche, but the idea of what a sports car can be. The Porsche 911, as it entered the modern era, stood not only as a successor to the 356, but as a symbol that had transcended its role as a car. The Porsche 911 became shorthand for aspiration, engineering excellence, and cultural identity. This was more than longevity. It was the ability to adapt without erasing the essence. For enthusiasts and casual observers alike, the silhouette remained instantly recognizable, even as technologies like water cooling, electronic driver aids, and turbocharging reshaped the details beneath the skin. What made the Porsche 911 endure wasn't nostalgia, it was the delicate balance of honoring tradition while proving itself relevant decade after decade. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, the Porsche 911 weathered challenges that could have derailed its legacy. Industry shifts towards safety, efficiency, and comfort risked diluting what made the car distinctive. Some worried that abandoning the air-cooled engine after decades would sever the lineage. Yet the transition to water-cooled power plants not only extended the model's viability, but opened doors for new levels of performance and refinement. Rather than betray its DNA, the Porsche 911 leaned into evolution, proving that authenticity does not require stasis. Enthusiasts may debate which generation best captures the spirit, but all agree that the through line of character remained unbroken. In the US, the Porsche 911's reputation matured alongside its audience. For some buyers, it became a lifelong dream realized. Garage posters turned into weekend drives. For others, it represented a pragmatic choice within the world of sports cars, reliable enough for real use, with a dealer network that reassured owners. That dual role as both dream car and dependable partner is rare in the automotive world, and it made the 911 stand apart from rivals that might shine brightly but briefly. Auctions, collector circles, and enthusiast gatherings only amplified this identity, transforming ownership into membership in a global club that stretched across generations. Culturally, the Porsche 911 became a fixture. It appeared in films, magazines, and music videos, not as a gimmick, but as a signal of taste and discernment. Unlike some exotics that screamed for attention, the 911 carried a subtler authority. Its design was iconic, but not ostentatious. Its performance was ferocious, but never wasteful. That duality allowed it to appeal across social and generational lines, becoming as relevant in a suburban garage as it was on a racetrack. The Porsche 911 was never trapped in a single identity. It evolved into a symbol flexible enough to mean ambition for one driver, heritage for another, and pure driving joy for a third. The aftermarket and tuning culture only deepened this legacy. From lightweight backdate builds that sought to capture the purity of early models, to high-performance restomods that pushed the limits of engineering, the Porsche 911 served as a blank canvas. Each variation testified to the adaptability of the platform, a sign that the core design was strong enough to host endless interpretations. Specialist firms emerged, elevating the car into near-mythical territory with bespoke restorations and modernized classics that commanded eye-watering prices. These creations, while out of reach for most, kept the 911 in the cultural conversation, reminding the world that even decades-old examples were still relevant. Motorsport continued to validate its pedigree. Porsche 911s racked up wins in endurance races and national championships, often against newer, more powerful rivals. Each victory reinforced the narrative that the car wasn't simply surviving on reputation, it was proving itself in the most demanding environments. This constant return to competition ensured that the brand never strayed far from its roots. For buyers, knowing that the same fundamental platform could dominate racetracks and still handle a school run created a sense of pride. The Porsche 911 didn't just look fast, it lived fast without apology. As time marched on, the Porsche 911 became less about what was under the hood and more about what it represented. It embodied the idea that progress and heritage could coexist, that evolution did not mean erasure. For enthusiasts considering a used model today, the story of the 911 is more than a history lesson. It's a roadmap of what to expect. Reliability remains stronger than many peers, but maintenance is never cheap. Early cars are coveted collectibles. Mid-era models balance accessibility with charm, and modern iterations deliver supercar performance with daily usability. Choosing a Porsche 911 is as much about choosing which chapter of the story you want to live as it is about selecting a machine. In the end, the Porsche 911's impact lies in how it closed the loop on the question first posed by the 356. Could a small, precise sports car become timeless? The answer is in every generation that followed, each proving that commitment to character can outlast trends, regulations, and even doubts from within. It became the sports car against which all others are measured, not by chance, but by decades of consistent evolution. And so the Porsche 911 did more than succeed the 356. It created a legacy of speed, one that still inspires every new driver who catches sight of that unmistakable silhouette. The Porsche 911, born from the foundation of the 356, remains one of the most enduring and adaptable sports cars the world has ever seen. For US enthusiasts today, the Porsche 911 represents both an attainable dream and a complex decision. Early air-cooled models have skyrocketed in value, often reaching six-figure prices at auctions, making them collectibles more than daily drivers. Later, water-cooled cars from the late 1990s and early 2000s are comparatively accessible, offering a way into the 911 experience without requiring a collector's budget. But even with lower entry costs, ownership is never inexpensive. Maintenance, specialized parts, and the expertise required to service them keep running costs well above the average car. For many buyers, that's part of the appeal. Owning a 911 means investing in something that is both a machine and a legacy. For collectors, the Porsche 911 serves as a rolling time capsule. Each generation captures the engineering priorities and cultural tone of its era, from the simplicity of early models to the technology-packed modern versions. For everyday drivers, it offers a unique proposition, a car that can handle commutes, road trips, and spirited back-road drives without feeling out of place in any setting. Few sports cars can make the same claim. That versatility is why the 911 has become so desirable in the US. It feels like a statement piece without demanding impractical compromises. Reliability, compared to rivals, has always been a quiet strength of the Porsche 911. While no sports car is trouble-free, many owners report that properly maintained examples can deliver decades of enjoyment. The caveat is cost. Repairs and upkeep are not cheap, and skipping maintenance often creates expensive problems down the road. Prospective owners need to budget for the reality that this is a precision instrument, not just a mode of transport. Still, the confidence that a 911 can endure years of spirited use, long highway miles, and even track days makes it feel like more than just a toy. It's an investment in driving pleasure. Availability in the US market remains strong, with used examples spanning nearly every generation. Whether someone wants a vintage collectible or a modern daily driver, there are choices that fit different budgets and goals. Importing rarer European spec models is possible, though often complicated, and buyers must weigh whether the uniqueness is worth the added expense. What matters most is clarity of purpose. Are you buying a 911 as a weekend classic, a daily thrill, or a long-term collectible? The answer shapes not only which generation makes sense, but also what kind of ownership experience awaits. In the end, the Porsche 911 has delivered on the promise the 3 from 56 first hinted at, that a small, unconventional sports car could evolve into a global icon. It has remained relevant not by chasing trends, but by refining its own identity, balancing tradition with innovation in a way few brands ever achieve. For American enthusiasts, the car embodies more than performance numbers. It carries the weight of heritage, the thrill of precision, and the reassurance that some icons only grow stronger with time. And when you see one glide past, engine humming, lines as familiar as an old photograph, you understand why the Porsche 911 is not just a car. It's proof that legends can be engineered, and that speed, when crafted with vision, can become timeless.